Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar on the Walk Cares Fund. Today we'll be covering Walk Cares basics, what workers need to know. My name is Andrea Miva Sanchez, and I'm the Walk Cares Fund Office Chief for Policy and Planning. We'll have time at the end of today's presentation to answer any questions you have. Anyone who's joined us on a computer or on using the Zoom app on your phone could submit your question through the Q&A function at any point in the presentation. If you join by calling the phone number, but you want to ask a question, you can find the link to join by computer or the app on our website at walkcaresfund.wa.gov/webinars. Here's a quick overview of the topics that we'll be covering today. We'll start with an overview of what long-term care is and how it impacts people who need care, their families, and the workplace. Then we'll talk about how Walk Cares works. Let's start by defining what we're talking about when we say long-term care or caregiving. Long-term care is help with activities of daily living like bathing, eating, dressing, preparing meals, grocery shopping, and more. It does not include medical care like doctor's visits and treatment for medical conditions. Long-term care covers a broad spectrum of needs and circumstances, including for younger people who've been unexpectedly injured or become disabled or ill. A lot of people don't realize what a broad range of services can be included when we talk about long-term care. We often think of it as care in a residential setting, like a nursing home or assisted living, but it can also include care in the home. And in fact, most people with long-term care needs can stay in their own homes as long as they have the right support. It's also very common for family caregivers to not realize that they are caregiving. You might go to your mom's house a couple of times a week to cook meals or drive her to appointments and make sure she's taken her medications. These are all common care activities. In fact, the majority of this type of care is provided on an informal basis as unpaid care from a family member, a friend, or a neighbor. So I'm going to go ahead and start a poll about experience with long-term care and caregiving. If you joined by computer or the Zoom app, I appreciate it if you could go ahead and answer. It'll help me learn a little bit more about who we've got in the audience. And we'll see just in a moment what the responses to the poll tell us about this group's experience with caregiving. But generally speaking, most of us have care stories in our families and in our communities. Family caregiving is the bedrock of long-term care. There are 860,000 family caregivers in Washington, which is about 11% of the population. We want to share a couple of stories from Washingtonians who are getting the kind of help that Walk Cares is designed to provide. Okay, now I just have to click the right button.
The last thing you want people thinking about when they're in their golden years is money. We have a new family member living with us, which is my mother-in-law, Kathleen. She has had MS as my husband since 6. We have our caregivers that come into the home and help out with her. She gets showers every day. Walk Cares is a really unique program. As you get older, you're still cared for and you're still valuable. It's just great to know that if you need it, Walk Cares will be there for them.
All right, and this is Sally and Patty. I'll go ahead and play their story for you now.
You can prepare as much as possible, but whatever you imagine, something else will happen. Patty and I have been together since 1984. Patty got diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2012. Having a caregiver helps with still being in a relationship. There's all sorts of expenses, renting the bed and the tilt space wheelchair. The money's gonna be there, just like health insurance, and hopefully you don't ever have to use it. Walk cares will help you take care of yourself.
So let's go ahead and display those poll results. Can you do that, Sam? All right, so this is the group that we're looking at here, right in the room with us. So there's 36% of people say they work in a long-term care field. 58% have provided unpaid care to a family member. It's more than half. And then there's folks who have some direct experience but don't know a lot. And then it looks like people, at least some folks, are familiar with Walk Cares Fund here. So thank you for taking our poll and sharing that information with us. So next, we're going to look at some numbers that help to illustrate this issue. 70% of us will need long-term care at some point in our lives. The problem is that long-term care can be really expensive. It costs nearly $36,000 a year for 20 hours of home care per week. And that's the average that's needed by current Medicaid long-term care clients. Also note that family caregiving isn't free either. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Because long-term care isn't medical care, it's not covered by health insurance or Medicare, except in very rare circumstances. And it's only covered by Medicaid after you've spent down your life savings to just $2,000. Even though long-term care is a predictable cost, most of us don't have a way to pay for it. The median household income for Washington seniors is $56,000 per year. 41% of Washington workers nearing retirement have no projected retirement income from a pension, 401k, or IRA. And another 42% have no pension and only enough 401k or IRA savings to replace 10% of their pre-retirement income. This is especially critical because our population is aging rapidly. The number of people age 85 and older, which is the blue line on the graph here, will more than double between 2020 and 2034. The caregiver support ratio, which is the number of potential family caregivers age 45 to 64, for everyone who's 80 and older, is declining sharply. That means that a lot less family support will be available for people in high-risk years that need care, and family caregivers are more likely to be providing care for multiple loved ones at a time. As a society, we'll need to provide better support for caregivers and be more innovative in financing and delivering long-term care and family support services. While cares may seem like a new expense for workers, it's important to keep in mind that the current system of relying on unpaid family caregivers to provide the vast majority of care isn't actually free. Almost half of family caregivers experience a related financial setback. Caregivers spend on average 25% of their own income on care-related expenses. It's common for caregivers to leave the workforce early to provide care. And caregivers 50 and older who do this lose an average of more than $300,000 in wages and benefits. Most working caregivers say a program that paid for them for the hours that they provide care would be helpful. So Walk Cares Fund is not an additional expense. It's just a better way to pay for long-term care that's more efficient and better at supporting families. Washington State, just like the rest of the country, is experiencing a workforce shortage. Job openings are increasing, but the number of available workers is not. With this kind of shortage, it's critical to keep as many people as possible in the workforce, and care responsibilities can have a really big impact. The majority of caregivers work full-time on top of their care and family responsibilities, and most report that it impacted their job responsibilities. Over half say that they have to go in late, leave early, or take time off to provide care. 15% reported reducing their hours, and many reported receiving warnings about their performance or attendance, either turning down a promotion, quitting, retiring, or losing benefits. While many caregivers find their role rewarding, it can also be highly stressful. Nearly 1 in 4 report their health has worsened since taking on this role. Long-term care is a significant driver of state budgets and accounts for roughly 6.6% of Washington's state budget. We don't often think about it, but these costs are paid for by all Washingtonians through taxes on goods and services. As our population ages, costs will rise accordingly. Without the WA Cares Fund, sales and other taxes would have had to go up to meet the cost of the age wave, and more family caregivers would have to quit their jobs and sacrifice their financial and retirement security to provide care to a loved one. So let's talk a little about how WA Cares Fund can help. WA Cares is a universal long-term care program in Washington state. It's an earned benefit, which means you contribute for a certain number of years to qualify for benefits. It's self-funded from worker contributions, which go into a dedicated trust fund used only for this program. Workers contribute 0.58% of every paycheck to WA Cares. And you can see what this looks like for the typical worker who makes just over $50,000 and would contribute $291 a year or $24 a month. You only contribute while you're working. Contributions stop when you retire or if you become unemployed. Everyone's covered at the same rate, regardless of pre-existing conditions. And when it comes time to claim benefits, there are no copays, no deductibles, and you never need to file a claim. We connect you with contracted providers for the services that you want and pay them directly. Contributions for the program started on July 1st of 2023, and benefits will become available in 2026. This is what contributions will look like over the course of a career. The typical Washington income is just about at the level in green in the middle. You can see that $290 in contributions each year totals out at $8,700 over 30 years. Almost all workers are automatically contributing to WA Cares, but here's a breakdown of the exceptions. So some workers that are not automatically included are federal employees, employees of tribes who are only included if the tribe opts in, self-employed people, they're only included if they opt in, and there are other workers who can get an exemption, which they must apply to the Employment Security Department to get. Some workers can apply for an optional exemption based on meeting certain conditions. So this includes workers who live out of state, people who are working here on a non-immigrant visa, spouses and domestic partners of people working in active duty military, veterans with a 70% service-connected disability. They can choose to apply for a permanent exemption, and they're available on an ongoing basis. And there was an exemption that was available for workers who had private long-term care insurance before November 1st of 2021. These applications are no longer available, but under the current law, workers who already have an approved private insurance exemption will continue to be exempt permanently. To apply for an exemption, you can start by visiting wacaresfund.wa.gov/exemptions for detailed instructions and a list of documentation required for your exemption type. You'll need to create a Secure Access Washington account or SAW account if you don't already have one. And then you'll follow the instructions on our website to add a new service and complete the application. ESD will review the application and send you an approval letter if your exemption is approved. You'll need to provide that letter to your current employer and any future employers. And if you have a conditional exemption, make sure to notify your employer and the Employment Security Department within 90 days if your situation changes and you no longer qualify. If you haven't submitted your application yet, but still plan to, it's important to submit it as soon as possible to ensure your effective date is as early as possible. Exemptions are done on a quarterly basis. So already anyone who's submitting their application after July 1st, their exemption will not be effective until October 1st at the earliest. So let's talk about the role of employers. Employers don't contribute to walk cares, only workers do. All that employers need to do is collect premiums for their workers, except for those who provided confirmation from ESD that they're exempt. The premium collection started July 1st of 2023. Employers will report wages and remit employee premiums to the Employment Security Department starting in October of 2023. Employers don't process exemption applications. That's ESD's role. And any worker who previously received an exemption approval letter from ESD and still has a valid exemption does not need to reapply. Employers should keep those exemption letters on file. If workers can't find their exemption letter, they can download a copy from the Secure Access Washington account that they use to submit their application. And there are detailed instructions available on our website. Everyone contributing to WACARE's fund for more than 500 hours per year is earning benefits, part-time and temporary workers included. By contributing for a certain number of years, you qualify for a $36,500 lifetime benefit. There are 3 pathways to meeting contribution requirements. There's early access for workers who have not yet earned lifetime access, but have a care need while working or soon after they leave work. When someone applies, the department looks back over the last 6 years, and if you've paid in for at least 3 of them, then you can have early access to that full benefit. Lifetime access is for workers who contribute 10 years without a break of 5 or more consecutive years. And there's a fast track for near retirees. If you're born before 1968, nearing retirement as the program begins, and therefore unlikely to qualify for that 10-year pathway, you can earn 10% of the benefit amount for each year that you work. So for example, if you work and contribute for 500 or more hours for 3 years, you'd earn 30% of the benefit amount, or just under $11,000 adjusted for inflation. In another example, you could work 500 or more hours after contributions start in July and retire at the end of 2023, and you'd still earn 10% of the benefit amount. And you can keep that to use when you need it. Near retirees have permanent access to whatever percentage of the benefit amount they earn at any time that they need care. They're also able to qualify through one of the other pathways if they meet those requirements. Once workers meet contribution requirements and need help with at least 3 activities of daily living, they can get access to a $36,500 budget for services and supports. The benefit will increase over time with inflation. With WACARES, workers get the flexibility and the freedom to choose the services and supports that meet their needs. That could mean in-home or residential care, but it could also include things like home modifications to make their home safer, assistive technology for things like medication reminders and fall detection that can help with some care needs. WACARES is designed to help people age in place in their homes for as long as possible. And that's what almost all of us want to do, and what most of us are able to do if we have the right supports in place. WACARES is also structured to support family caregivers. So you can choose someone who would otherwise be caring for you on an unpaid basis to get training and be paid, even your spouse. WACARES can help lessen the impact on family caregivers by paying them for their time or by providing other wraparound support services. We get asked a lot about how far the benefit will go, and it won't cover 100% of care for everyone, but it would cover the amount of in-home care an average Medicaid client uses for roughly a year. About 1/3 of people need care for a year or less, and for those people, WellCares may be able to cover all of the care they need. For others, WellCares provides a family with immediate relief and some time to plan for future costs. Here's some examples of how someone might use their benefit. They could pay a family member to care for them about 10 hours per week for 2 years and get care supplies for about $33,500. Or they could choose services to help them stay safely in their own home. They could purchase $15,000 worth of renovations, like a bathroom modification or a wheelchair ramp to improve their home's accessibility. They could get an electric wheelchair or a scooter and have meals delivered for 3 years for around $26,800. Or someone who needs long-term care due to an unexpected injury could get 20 hours of in-home care per week for a year, plus transportation to appointments and crutches for about $34,600. WellCares is a cross-agency program with multiple state agencies that have responsibility to design, develop, and implement the program. So if you have questions about exemptions or opting in, the Employment Security Department is the right place to go. If you have other questions, you can connect with DSHS. And you'll also work with DSHS in the future if you apply for benefits and to get a care needs assessment. The Healthcare Authority has responsibility for paying providers, and the Office of the State Actuary is responsible for ongoing actuarial analysis to make sure that the funds remain solvent. So that ends the slideshow that we have today, and we'll go ahead and open it up for questions and answers. All right, is someone gonna read these, or should I read these, Sam? I don't know how you typically do it.
I can read them if you need me to.
Okay, yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay. We have one that is, I'm retiring in January 2024 and I don't have an exemption. But I'm paying into WellCares now. Is there a way to get an exemption or a refund for the premiums I pay from July 2023 to January 2024?
There is not. There are no refunds for premiums. It sounds like if you have worked at least 500 hours in 2023, then you, depending on your age, if you're born before 1968, you would have 1/10 of that benefit unit available to you whenever you need it.
What if you retire in 3 years and were born in January of 1968?
If you retire in 3 years, if you paid in for 3 years at 500 hours per year, then if you ended up needing care within 3 years after retiring, you could be eligible for that full benefit. And if not, those funds remain in the account and support the program in the 75-year horizon that the program is designed to fund care for Washingtonians.
What is an activity of daily living?
Activities of daily living, they're different. Some examples would be like bathing, eating, dressing, taking medications. It's things that you do in your regular daily life. A lot of us just do them. We don't need any help, but a lot of times when we get older, we do need help. And there are some standard activities of daily living that are usually considered in long-term care as things that are critical for helping people stay at home. So those are the types of activities of daily living that we'll be looking at when we're looking at delivering benefits to people who need care.
Who determines whether an individual needs help with 3 ADLs? Is it self-reported or does it require medical provider confirmation?
It will be done by an assessor. Usually those are folks who are employed by the Department of Social and Health Services. It's usually done via conversation. And we look at the types of help that you need or the types of help that you have had over the last 7 days, whether you're in your home or living in a residential setting.
What if someone contributes for 10 years and then moves out of state?
That's a good question. So right now, the benefits are only available to people who live in the state when they need care. We have an oversight body, it's the LTSS Trust Commission, and they have recommended that Washington make these benefits portable for people. And the method that they have recommended is that folks have the option to continue paying in until the Social Security retirement age. That would fund the ability for people to continue to pay in and then also get care if they lived out of state. But that would be something that the legislature would need to enact in order to be able to pay benefits to people who leave.
Can a family member be paid as a caregiver?
Yes, they can. A lot of the people who are providing care in our Medicaid long-term care system are family members. There's some training requirements that folks go through, and then they can become paid to provide that care.
What is the case if someone has funded the program more than their return?
Well, if that happens, so most people who, are regular income earners, that's very unlikely to happen. It's not like if you pay in for 30 years, you're still going to get a $36,500 benefit. Because of inflation over time, that amount will continue to increase. It is possible for really high income earners that they could pay in more than they would get out. Those funds all remain in the account. Works a little bit like Medicare or Social Security. Some people won't use it and other people will, but those funds don't get refunded. They stay in the account and they fund the care for the folks who end up needing it.
Can a client utilize WACARES if they're already enrolled in an LTC or MTD program?
They could, if they worked for 500 hours a year and contributed, then they would earn benefits just like anyone else. WACARES will likely be the first payer. So WACARES would come in first, and then those other services could pay after WACARES is exhausted.
Sorry. Can you talk about the exemption process for employees on a working on a visa?
Sure. Employees who are working on a visa can apply for an exemption through the Employment Security Department. There is information on our website on the exemptions page that talks about the documentation to provide, but they can apply using their SAW account. I know for some H-2A workers, there's a paper application that is available on site, on the job site for workers to apply in a paper process. And ESD is working through those, both the paper and the electronic exemptions now.
How many years does WACARES provide the benefit for? And what is the plan to adjust for inflation?
Someone's individual benefit lasts over, there's no limit on the number of years or anything that they can use that in. So for most people, you might say you get 20 hours of in-home care that would last you for about a year. But let's say you stretch it out, you could receive care for 2 years. Maybe you're using it just for in-home technology, assistive devices. It could last for longer than that. What was the second part of that question, Sam?
What is the plan to adjust for inflation?
Inflation. Yeah, so we have an oversight body called the Benefits Council. Is chaired by OFM. And they'll be meeting, I believe it's annually, and they will be making a recommendation to increase the benefits up to the CPI, and they'll do that on an annual basis. So we anticipate that each year it will be able to go up at least to the CPI.
I think we have time for just 1 or 2 more questions, but if you submitted a question in the Q&A, we'll get your email address from your registration and we'll try and respond to you guys after the webinar. And I'm seeing a lot of questions about if the slides are available. The slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on our website this afternoon. You can find it there. And then the last question, I'm seeing a lot of, if you live in Washington and pay into WellCares and then you move out of state and then move back to WellCares, will you lose your benefits?
You won't actually, as long as you've paid in and invested. So if you've paid in for 10 years, if you did leave the state and then you came back and you needed care, your vesting would still be there for you, and you could use that to pay for care.
Great. I will say, if you submitted a question anonymously, we won't be able to respond to you via email. So you can reach out to our customer service center. Andrea, I think we'll talk about that in a second, but if you submitted it not anonymously, we will reach out to you.
All right, so before we close, here's just a quick recap of the many ways that most of us will be benefiting from WellCares. Of course, if you or a loved one qualifies, then you'll be able to get the help that you need with activities of daily living. But it does go beyond that to the workplace, where your coworkers are often working caregivers and would otherwise be struggling without the support that something like this would provide. There'll be financial benefits for families and communities when beneficiaries choose to make a loved one a paid caregiver. And the program will ensure the majority of families who aren't able to afford private long-term care insurance can access affordable coverage. The program will lower the cost of long-term care spending that we all typically pay through taxes on goods and services. So as Sam mentioned, we'll post the webinar and the recording on our website at wellcaresfund.wa.gov/webinars for those who are interested. To get the latest program updates, we'll also encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, and you can sign up for the newsletter on our website. So thank you again for your time, and have a great afternoon.